Good evening, everyone. I thought it would be really good to start with this motivational movie. If you want to see the whole movie, it's actually available on YouTube. I highly recommend it. There are also plenty of interviews with Dr. Ben Carson. As you can see, he actually received the highest American civilian award in 2008, not only for his achievements in pediatric neurosurgery, but also for starting a scholarship fund with his wife. They've got tremendous passion for education. I don't think you can blame them. Today's presentation will be based on basically a little bit of literature overview. You can see some of the books displayed here on the piano. Others are photographed and displayed on the partition wall. When you go out, there is a sort of little resource table. You can take a list home if you are interested. There are also some really wonderful websites. So we'll have a little look at our brain, a very little glimpse, only what we need for a bit more understanding about interactions between our thoughts, emotions, system of beliefs, our body, our health, our happiness. I think if we can improve on our health and happiness, these are the two most desirable things in life, don't you agree? It will also include a bit of stress, and one last slide will summarize detoxing our brain. All of these points will be basically intermingled within the presentation, but the last 2 points we will only touch briefly because they would warrant separate talks. It's just not enough time to talk about all of that tonight. My goal is to empower us to have deeper appreciation about how changeable the brain is. Because I think we've been taught a lot of wrong stuff, at least I was. The brain is actually very changeable. So, let's start with the brain. Although it has only 2% of our body weight, it uses 15% of our blood flow, 20% of our oxygen, and 1/4 of all glucose available for the body. What does it need the energy for? At any given moment, there is 400 million interactions in the brain. It's just unimaginable. We can consciously be aware of only about 2,000 of them. Even that is a large number. This is surprising. We've got 3 million years worth of memory storage in our brain if we use it the way we do every day. Doesn't that suggest that we were supposed to live a little bit longer than we do? Now, active thinking, creating and recalling from memory, uses only 2% of the energy. That's based on blood flow and magnetic resonance imaging studies. The basic idea is that if there is more blood flow to the area of the brain, that means that it's more active because there is more flow of oxygen and glucose. On top of that, if we've got some unresolved issues, it actually takes a big chunk of those remaining 2%, and we've got almost nothing left for our normal everyday tasks and issues that we need our brain for. I'm sure you have all experienced that if you are going through some really difficult period of time, that you've got difficulties concentrating on anything else. Yeah? Everybody is good. Just to make you think and to answer me a little bit, do you think there is any time or what time is there when the brain is not active? If we are dead, the brain is not working, that's right. So thank you, really great answer. I heard sleep, and this is actually a catchy question. Still working very much. I couldn't help myself, sorry, because it's the area I work in. Our brain actually is very active while we sleep, especially when we are dreaming. It uses more energy than when we are thinking, learning for exams, for example. The brain is basically making some sense out of what happened during the day, and it puts it somewhere in the memory. So it's like cleaning the table, whatever happened during the day, it has to clean it up, so it's got space the next day to put something there. Although our brain cells die in vast numbers after we are born, it's not all bad news. Let's imagine Michelangelo. When he goes to choose a piece of marble, he starts with more marble, but when he finishes, he's got a masterpiece. And that's what's happening to our brain as little children. Whatever is used is retained. Whatever is not used, it will actually be killed quite brutally. That's a word that you probably heard of, neuroplasticity, the ability to grow new neurons or nerves. We used to be taught that once born, we can never grow any new nerves. But children being children, they don't always listen, and they do it quite liberally. Then we started postponing the age in which we actually cannot do it. Until today we know that we can grow new neurons till the day we die. But it has a condition. We have to stimulate the brain. We have to give it some challenge. It doesn't always have to be studying or thinking deeply. It can be a new hobby, something that challenges us. The bottom line is, this is true more for the brain than for our muscles. Use it or lose it. Dr. Norman Deutsch, who is basically situated here in Melbourne at the moment, wrote absolutely fascinating book. Highly recommend it. It's called The Brain That Changes Itself. He looks at it from a little bit different perspective, and he says this: the brain is hungry for real estate. If a person was involved in some unfortunate accident and lost their sight, then the occipital area where the visual stimuli used to be analyzed is free for the taking. And it's like your neighbors seeing that your house has been empty for a long time, they come and take over. That's exactly what the brain does. And that's why a lot of blind people or visually impaired actually have enhanced touch. Have you ever tried to read Braille? I've tried it a long time ago, yes, thank you, and I find it extremely difficult. You can try it. I've got about 5 of those sheets on the resource table, so you can try it and see how difficult it is. Can there be a dark side of neuroplasticity? It's growing new hormones, that's new neurons, I'm sorry. That's what it means. Can there be dark side? I've heard yes, that's the correct answer. When would that be? An example?
Bad habits?
Yes, excellent. Yeah. Yes. Yes, learning new habits, yes, which can be either positive or negative, yes, so it can go either way. All I want you to appreciate from this picture is this little almond-shaped organ. It's called amygdala, which in Latin means almond. That's our emotional library. In this little organ, we store all the emotions that we have ever experienced. It's not just the strong emotions and fear, panic, all of them. At the back, I would like you to notice that cingulate gyrus that actually controls our mood. And in the very middle, thalamus, That's like a relay station. Everything that comes outside of our body, all the stimuli, all we know about the world that comes from outside of the body goes first to the limbic system, to the emotional brain, and then through thalamus to our thinking brain, our intellectual brain, then going back into limbic system to alter the emotions. I want to share with you one absolutely fantastic study. I'm really excited about this one. Dr. Newberg from Pennsylvania University took 60 to 65-year-olds and gave them a task. The task was for 30 days to meditate 12 minutes, but specifically on a God of love. Nothing else but that. What was the result? In the periphery, it was decreased heart rate and blood pressure, which is desirable, especially in that age, but that doesn't touch me much. What they found was that there was increase in that mood controlling area in just 30 days of 12 minutes investment each day. I think that's amazing. How did they find out? They did MRIs before and after the 30-day trial, so it's really not what they thought. It's based on very solid evidence. It also decreased activity of amygdala. As you saw, the amygdala is responsible for our very strong reactions, especially in extreme situations when we need to really react very quickly. But it's based on stress hormones. It releases or triggers the release of many stress hormones. It's good in emergency, but we cannot live every day, all day on emergency. That actually destroys us. So it calmed the amygdala, decreased the stress hormones, which will also decrease inflammation in the body, which means less pain. Okay. A lot of really good stuff. And one last one that is really great, it improved memory. In just 30 days, there was noticeable improvement in memory. Can we afford not to meditate 12 minutes a day? What do you think these people are doing? Oh, Estera, you think outside of the square? I'm really impressed with you. Social worker, yes, fantastic. Yes, they could actually be singing. Yet our first impression is that they are arguing. The other day, I met a friend of mine and asked him, how are you doing? He said, oh, fantastic. We just came back from our holidays and I feel really great. A little bit later, I met his wife and said, I heard that you went on holidays. How was it? He said, oh, please, don't even mention that. I'm so happy that we are back at home. So my question today is for us to start thinking, why do people react differently in the very same situation? How can that be? And that's not a rhetoric question. I actually want you to think and answer me. Character, yes? Anything else? The character is just too broad. I would like a little bit more specific. Pardon?
Different sexes.
Yes, sure. Different interests.
Past experiences.
Past experiences, thank you. Attitudes. Good, excellent. Okay, perceptions, fantastic. Okay. Expectations, yes. Okay. I will, for the purpose of this talk, just split it into three things. We can talk about this whole evening, but for simplicity, the first thing would be emotions. which are based on past experiences, but also how we explain to ourselves those emotions. So these are already thoughts, not just emotions. Now, if you imagine heart as part of a larger cardiovascular system, what do you think a thought is part of? No philosophy, just very simply. Yeah, come on. The question is, what is a thought part of a bigger picture? What would that be? How would you call it?
Process of the brain.
Yes, who we are, yes. Any other way to describe it? I actually had it in the overview at the beginning, so there was a hint for you. Yeah, anybody? Our thoughts are actually part of our value system, of our belief system, of our worldview, of the way we think, okay? Just simple stuff. I wasn't looking for some philosophical theories. But also, not only the emotions and thoughts influence our belief system also influences emotions and thoughts. It's never linear, it's always circular. Everything integrates with everything else, and the end result is something that will again interact with all the ingredients, so to speak, okay? So that's the belief system, value system. What is that? Belief, in this sense, does not mean belief in God. When we have a look at Dr. Newberg, whom we've already met before, who wrote many fantastic books, he explains it this way. Everything we understand about the world is ultimately a belief. But beliefs can be constructive or destructive. We need to learn how to develop and hold those beliefs that are the most constructive. Another way of looking at it, looking at the framework of our beliefs, it's a system that helps us make sense out of the complicated world around us. It's based on our past experiences, so it involves emotions and how we understand our experiences, so that's the thinking. Also, what we perceive that works for us, so the practical bit of it, our experience. I'm sure you have seen children, how great they are in knowing how to play mommy and how to use very different methods to play daddy to get what they want. They work it out very quickly. Okay. That's based on experience. What worked? Basically, our belief system is like putting on glasses. And yes, this is my gorgeous grandchild. But it actually filters out much more than we think. It lets in only 15 to 35% of everything we see, read, or hear. That's very little, isn't it? Surprisingly little. And that's why people in the same situation can come to totally different conclusions. That's one part of it. If you imagine memory, it's never like a book with all the writing linear. No, it's more like a tree. And the brain hangs up the information somewhere where it thinks it belongs, where it makes sense. If something doesn't make sense, it just goes. We don't remember it because it did not make sense. I believe, based on some studies, that we actually remember everything that happened in our life, that we've witnessed, but it's not as easily retrievable. The memories that are associated with the strongest emotion will be easiest to retrieve. Those that were sort of neutral will be hidden somewhere very deep inside the brain where it's not that easy to retrieve. So can we change the framework of our beliefs? Yes or no? Of course we can, we know that. So let's have a look what the neurologists say about that. And that actually surprised me quite a lot. The brain is continually reorganizing itself according to what it's learning. And that includes, obviously, the practical experience of learning. Our genes and environment interact continually to change the brain. I think these are absolutely profound truths. And one more. From birth till the day we die, we, the owners, to the extent that our genes allow it, can actively shape the way our brain develops. It really shocked me because I used to be taught that we are basically prisoners of our genes. We can't go much either way. Basically, within our genes, we still have immense amount of freedom. Yes, they do sort of not allow us to go somewhere, I can't be motored, but still within the set of genes that we have immense freedom. Now the question is, how do we change the system of beliefs? And the simple answer is with difficulties. We have already learned how to control our emotions, so I just touched on it briefly. How do we control emotions? By the way we think about them. And it's the same about the belief system. We cannot change the whole system, but we can change a thought at a time. Courage and perseverance is needed to confront and control our emotions. I know that these are not popular words, none of them courage, perseverance, confronting, controlling, but that's what's needed to be done if we want to change something, anything basically. One of the most important things are that we need to break away from our past painful experiences. It doesn't mean to rewrite our history or ignore that something happened. No, but if we find ourselves repeatedly in certain situations, then we need to think, okay, what gets me into those situations? Let's say somebody is being used by many people. Why? What is in that person that allows others to do that to them? So we need to think about what can be changed in us, if there is something. Because, for example, if children are abused, there is absolutely nothing they could do about it. And we also need to learn something from that experience about the other person. We need to choose our friends carefully. Or we can still be friends with that person, but know that we cannot trust that person in that particular area. I'm talking about things that we all know. I'm just putting it into a little bit different perspective. Now, it's also necessary to get healing from our past experiences. Let's imagine that you cut yourself. There are plenty of ways how to deal with it, but I'll stick with 3. You can clean it, disinfect it, and cover it, giving yourself the best and quickest way to recovery. Or you can totally ignore it. You'll make a mess, the blood will be everywhere. It will take longer to heal. You can get it infected a bit because you didn't clean it. But if you are healthy, you'll recover. Or you can take a bit of manure and nicely apply it to the wound. You know how many people do that with their emotional wounds? It's incredible. And it's done by wrong thinking about the situation. And it can kill, like the infected wound. Negative thoughts and emotions create a vicious cycle, feeding off each other and amplifying each other. It doesn't stay linear, it goes further. And also, negative emotion leads to a negative thought that is already distorted. It's unrealistic. So under the influence of negative emotion, there will be a negative thought that is unrealistic. Then that will be applied back to the emotion, amplify the emotion, and it's a vicious cycle that can only go wrong. Fortunately, we can actually do it the other way around. And as the vicious negative cycle is addictive, so is the positive cycle. Because we see great results, and that actually helps us to go in that direction. This is done by affirming positive thoughts and beliefs relating to our present situation and future. In other words, we don't base everything on our past experiences. Past is past, we cannot do anything about it. But our present situation, we can choose to respond differently, and by that, we can change the result. We are not supposed to be prisoners of our past, but prisoners of hope. Some people will say, I prefer to be realistic. Do you know which group of people are the most realistic? Don't expect you to know that. People mildly depressed. I prefer to have hope than to live in mild depression all my life. The bottom line is, take care of your emotions or they will take care of you. There's no other choice. There's no middle ground. Emotions have their value, definitely. They are there to alert us and to guide us, especially in extreme situations. If there is an emergency, we don't have time to think. We just have to act straight away. So the information only goes to amygdala and back, so we respond straight away. But the emotions are not to rule us, because most of our situations in life are not emergency situations. Now the difficult point. Make a decision to accept a thought if it's good for you, or reject it if it's not. The emotions often rise up involuntarily. That's just a response to a situation. But how we think about it, that's what makes the difference. It's sort of like chain reaction. It's the easiest to stop before it starts. After it rolls, it's just difficult to do anything about it. So this is the moment of decision. How do we think about the emotion that rose up in us? And that's where we need to exercise our will. Now, do you know what strengthens our will? Or perhaps I'll rephrase it. When do you find it most difficult to have willpower?
When I'm tired.
Yes, fantastic. I have the same issue.
When you're stressed.
When you are stressed, excellent, yeah. Okay, so the things that would help us would be sleep, have enough sleep. Unfortunately, our society is basically sleep deprived. Absolute majority of people are sleep deprived, and that severely diminishes our willpower. So don't blame yourself all the time, okay? Just have a rest. The other thing is something that some people know and some don't. I found an interesting article on Monday in Herald Sun. They say that sitting down all day is the new smoking. And some tips about how to be active. Some of it is also copied and available for you on the table. Actually, aerobic exercise has even more benefit for the brain than it has for our muscles. Anybody knows what aerobic exercise does? How do you feel after good exercise? Didn't hear that, sorry. Energized. Anything else? Refreshed. How about feelings? More happy, excellent. So it actually makes us more happy. And it does also, anybody else wanted to say something?
Proud of yourself.
Yeah, good. That's right, that's right. It immensely increases our power of will. Yeah. Yeah. There is one more thing that the exercise does is it's called cerebral lateralization, which means that if there is too much blood flow in one part of brain and not enough in the other, it puts it in balance. Now, balance is a word that is basic for all life. In nature, our life, our brain, a lot of times we are out of balance because that's how the world is today. Adults are usually too stressed, too overworked. Kids have too much time to play games, watch some movie, play some more computer games. What that does is just act on the emotional brain at the cost of the thinking brain. So if you want your child to go and do their homework after they've played on the computer for a while, forget it. But you can help them. If you go out and have some exercises with them, at least for 10 minutes, that will put the blood flow a little bit more back to balance, and then they can concentrate on their homework. Okay? And it will give you time to spend with them, which is always great too. So just to recapture, emotions and thoughts feed off each other. Thoughts, when unchecked, often follow the pattern of emotions. When you wake up in the morning and you feel awful, you drive to work, and if you are not careful, then the thinking will be, yesterday that lady at work wasn't too nice to me. I wonder what she will tell me today. By the time you come to work, you can already be upset at a person who has done nothing to you yet. You know? So it's good to take your thoughts somewhere else. It works for kids, it works for us. So listening to either some music or something that will actually lift your mood. Okay? So if unchecked, the emotions often follow the pattern of the thoughts will follow the pattern of emotions. Thoughts create our mood, which is just a longer lasting emotion. In some schools of thoughts, and there is a value in it, emotions are not separated into positive and negative. Because, let's say you see somebody being abused, you get angry, yeah? And that's the correct emotion in that situation. So the emotion as such is not negative or positive, but it can lead, if unchecked or grows on its own, to negative or positive results. And that's what other schools of psychology base the distinction between positive and negative emotions. So the positive ones we all know: love, joy, peace, happiness, kindness, gentleness, self-control, forgiveness, patience. They are also called faith-based or love-based emotions. Then the negative ones we know as well: fear, hate, worry, anxiety, anger, hostility, rage, ill will, resentment, frustration, impatience, irritation, and unforgiveness. So where are we on the seesaw of life? Are we acting out based on fears, based on our past disappointments? Or are we daily renewing our mind, or retraining, or reorganizing our brain based on the beautiful promises of a loving God? Dr. Colin Long, who takes care of Hollywood celebrities, and I don't envy her, says this: The topic at the moment is toxicity, the arch nemesis of one's happiness. I got to think about how toxicity plays out in some of my clients' lives through what? Anger, then she names gossip. You usually don't put gossip with these baddies. But it's there, and it hurts not only those that we gossip about, but our own brain, because we believe our words more than we believe anything else. It's the feedback loop. Whatever we say, we will believe more. That's why it's important to repeat to ourselves positive stuff, God's love, God's leading, God's grace, all that stuff. That's really important. If you forget everything I said today, remember this one. Unforgiveness is like drinking a poison, expecting the other person to die. Then Dr. Colin Long continues. If your significant other pushes your buttons, resist trying to get them back, and instead do something nice for them. You will be awestruck at how your mood starts to elevate and your life begins to transform. What a thought. We literally create our own reality. Our thoughts can distress us, making us clever, calmer, and in control of our emotions. Or they can do just the opposite. The choice is ours. And that's what Dr. Caroline Leaf says in this wonderful book, Who Switched Off My Brain. Again, highly recommend to read that one. Let's have a look at stress. I think by now it's obvious that what happens to us is some part, but how we respond to it is probably the bigger part. I don't know where people came up with the 10%, 90%, and it's not important. It's stated in many different sources, but the bottom line is, many times what happens to us, we could not choose or prevent. So that's it. That's the reality. Let's deal with it. How we respond to it is all we can do. Stress is actually a word that comes from engineering. It means pressure on material, whether it's on the surface or whether it's by pulling. It's a pressure that the material can withstand. When we talk about stress, we obviously think about the extreme of it. If we've got too low stress, like when we are on holidays, we usually don't perform anything. We need certain level of stress to make us more alert and performing really well. But if the stress increases, we start losing the alertness, we start to be anxious, and some people even go down to nervous breakdown. So when we talk about stress, all of us mean the excess that can kill us. Stress is associated with plenty of diseases, from stomach ulcers, heart disease, asthma, colds and flus, cancer. 15 years ago, when I said to a friend of mine that stress is associated with cancer, she laughed at me. And then I studied at Monash Uni, and we were taught that. So within 5 years, the information that was given to students changed quite dramatically. Stress is also associated with depression, eczema, and other skin disorders. I would just like to comment a little bit about the post-traumatic stress disorder. Obviously, this is an extreme situation, and these people are under extreme stress. And stress, as we've seen, releases a lot of stress hormones under the influence of amygdala. What that does, when there are high levels of cortisol, it kills all new growing neurons. We can't learn anything. We can't learn to think differently. That's why people who had cognitive behavioral therapy and didn't improve, what the medicine actually did, they give them cortisol-lowering medication, and they start to improve immensely. Isn't that interesting? When I first read that 9 out of 10 visits to the doctor are stress-related, I said, yeah, that's a little bit exaggerated. Then I came across that Dr. Caroline Leaf's book, Who Switched Off My Brain, and her research group says this: 87% of illnesses can be attributed to the thought life, and only 13% to diet, environment, and genetics. She talks about thoughts, not emotions. But emotions have their influence too. Studies also link chronic diseases to the epidemic of toxic emotions in our culture. She continues this way: thoughts do cause illness and should be studied and controlled. If they are powerful enough to make us sick, they are powerful enough to make us healthy as well. What a thought. So, if the thoughts should be studied, what are they? And that's a rhetoric question this time. A lot of people think that because they are invisible, they are sort of wishy-washy, airy-fairy nothings. That's not true. Although 5% of brain activity is still attributed to electrical impulses, 95% are chemically based. What it means that all thoughts and emotions are triggered by, but also trigger release of chemicals. And those chemicals are not only in the brain, they are also in the rest of our body. They are produced even in much larger quantities in our 2 really great systems, digestive and immune. Anybody heard about serotonin? Yes, everybody did. In what context? Don't hear you. Happiness, yes. I was more expecting depression, so the opposite. Yes, a lot of people who are on depression will have SSRIs, which are serotonin inhibitors, reuptake inhibitors, to increase the levels of serotonin, okay? 90% of serotonin is produced in our digestive system. It's responsible there for peristalsis, or the movement of our intestines. But the same chemical in the brain contributes to feeling of happiness and well-being. That's why a lot of socializing is done around food. Now the crunch. Positive thoughts release chemicals that are beneficial for the body. That's why it can heal the body. While negative thoughts release poisons to our body. If you imagine it, imagine that this is brain, neurons. The positive thoughts would create a lot of new connections between the nerves, while the negative thoughts, the toxins, actually kill the neurons and make sort of holes visible in the brain. So, what are the 3 most toxic thoughts? They look very innocent. I must do well. You must treat me well. The world must be easy. That's again based on Dr. Caroline Leaf's book, Research, Who Switched Off My Brain. Now, I want to underline that the key word there is must. Of course, we all want to do good. We want other people to treat us well, and we want the life to be as easy as possible. But if we demand unrealistic performance from ourselves as well as others, this puts our mind and body in the stress mode, and thus has negative effect on our health. So this is our last slide. We actually came to the end. I like to call it the positive replacement therapy. This is the way to detox our brain. As we detox our body, clean it, we need to detox our brain. Thinking about positive stuff, so blessings in our life, appreciating it. Developing an attitude of gratitude. That seems easy, but it's not. When we look at our society, we've got everything. That means that we take a lot of things for granted. We are not grateful for it anymore because it has to be that way. Now imagine a negative situation. How do you respond then? Can you still have an attitude of gratitude? I remember a young man, we'll call him Tom. He got into an unfortunate situation when he had a lot of physical pain. It basically paralyzed his family life and his work. And the doctors weren't helping him. They had nothing to offer. He talked with his friend, and she heard in his voice that he was getting really down. So she was praying for him and thinking about him. And next time he called, she said to him, "Look, I can't even imagine what it is to go through what you are going through. And I don't mean to be disrespectful. But I've come over something that is interesting. We are supposed to bring our requests to God with thanksgiving. How about every morning before you get out of bed, you think about one thing that you can honestly be grateful for?" About a week later, he called and excitement was in his voice. It works, it works. Doesn't mean that he got rid of all the pain, but A, his mood lifted, and B, some of the pain actually subsided. And then his brain was open to see other options. He might struggle with that type of pain for the rest of his life, but the level or degree of it is quite different. Whenever we revisit the painful thoughts, painful experiences, it again releases the toxins it did at the start. And also, the nerves will grow stronger. There will be more connections. So it's like if you go somewhere first time, you'll have a little path. But if you revisit it often, it will become a highway. And the brain will go there automatically. That's why we need to control the thoughts. These are just suggestions. There are plenty more, but these are to start with. Focusing on and spending time with people who bring us joy and happiness. That's fantastic. That really increases our mood, makes us healthier, makes us happier. But also giving the same to other people, even those who in our mind don't deserve it. Altruistic love has been shown in studies as the thing that improves our own happiness the most. And when you are alone, just focus on happy memories or anticipating or planning special events. To start us on the way to detoxing our brain, we've got a little Father's love letter over there on the resource table. Take it home, it's for all of you. The other stuff is there just for those who are interested. This is for everybody. So, let's open the windows of our mind and let the fresh air come in. Let's enjoy the present moment. The past is gone, can't change it. The future is not ours. All we have is this present moment, so let's not waste it. Some of you brought some lovely nibbles, so I think it's time to enjoy them together now. Thank you very much for coming.